This is part 1 of a 6-part series going through the Mike Company Master Budget problem. What you have on the first tab here is the beginning balance sheet, as it is the same numbers that you have from the problem itself. The format's a little bit differently. We stack the assets and liabilities and stockholders' equity just because it makes it easier in Excel to do it that way. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do the sales budget. So starting off, as any budget, just like any financial statement, you need a proper heading. It's the Mike Company, it is the sales budget, and it is for the first quarter. Part 1 of your sales budget, you list off the timing of all of your sales. Now what we know is we're dealing with January, February, and March. Now what I'm doing here is I'm basically formatting the columns B, C, and D to have a dollar sign, and I changed to decrease the decimal. Even the decimals exist, they won't appear. So with the sales, we know that in January we had credit sales because it tells us in part 2 of the Mike Company that all sales are on credit. That's the only sales that they have. In January, total sales were $100,000. And in part 1 they say Mike Company expects sales in January to be $100,000 and expects sales to grow by 10% each month. So in February, sales are going to be equal to 10% greater than January sales. So we multiply January sales times 1.1. March's sales will also increase over February's by 10%. So it's February's sales times 1.1. And that is part 1 of your sales budget. All you're doing is you are scheduling out the timing of your expected sales. Since all we have in this problem are credit sales, it's fairly straightforward. Part 2 of your sales budget, which the book calls the schedule of cash receipts, we're just simply going to show the timing of our cash receipts. Now the cash receipts come from sales from this quarter, or sales from this month, as well as sales from next month, because it tells us in part 2 of the problem that all sales are on credit and it collects 70% of all sales in the month of the sale, the remaining 30% the month after the sale. So of that $100,000 in January sales, we're going to collect 70% of it in January, the remaining 30% in February. So we're going to set up 2 rows here. First, say what are the cash receipts from sales this month, and we're going to collect 70% of sales of this month. The other portion of cash receipts we're going to collect from sales last month 30%, and that will give us total cash receipts. So the sales that we collect in January will consist of 30% or 70% of January's sales. So it's going to be equal to 0.7 times January sales, and you can simply copy that formula over. You see that each of these are 70% of the sale that's ahead. Now, the remaining 30% of January's sales are going to be collected in February. So February's cash receipts are going to be equal to, in addition to 70% of February sales, it's going to be 30% of January sales. 0.3 times January sales. And you're going to copy that formula over. Now you'll notice I've gone out an extra month, and in every budget, because of the way we deal with our purchases budget, having an extra month worth of data is important. And we'll get to why that is in part 2 when we do the purchases budget. So we'll just expand these formulas over. Now in January, our cash collections consist of 70% of January sales, but 30% of the previous December sales. Well, where will those show up? It's a sale that you have earned but haven't collected yet, and that is accounts receivable. So the beginning balance of accounts receivable will be collected in January. December's accounts receivable you'll collect in January. So I'm going to link back to my beginning balance sheet. It's $25,000 worth of accounts receivable. That's what's going to be collected in January. So my total cash receipts in January is $95,000. You can copy that formula over. It's always good format to put underlines and double underlines. A single underline tells you that a mathematical operation is about to occur, and a double underline indicates where that total has occurred. So here we have our sales budget for my company. Note we have done an extra month in April here, and that will help us with our purchases budget in part 2 of this series.